it's Miss Tina. I'm back to talk to you about ponds again. Remember earlier we read Froggy Learns How to Swim, and remember frogs live in ponds. There's his pond. You can see the frogs in the pond, and we can see the plants, the tall grass and the cattails and the lily pads and the pretty lily flowers. We're gonna make some of that today. You can make this stuff at your house, give you some ideas of things to do that have to do with ponds. First thing we want to do, of course, if you read Froggy Book, you want to make a frog for your pond. I have a couple ways you can do that. You can put your hand on a piece of paper and have someone else trace it for you. And then you would cut it out. If you don't have green paper or you would rather, you can paint your hand and you could make a handprint like that. And that could be cut out for a frog. And then I cut out some circles. And I drew circles on the inside to make his eyes. I gave him a smile. He's happy. And then frogs have very long tongues, so they can catch flies. So I cut out a long strip of paper. And then if you want to make it curly, you can wrap that paper around a pencil or a marker, something like that. And you can give him a long curly tongue and put him in your pond. We should probably paint our pond first and let that dry a little bit before we get started with too many animals. To make the mud at the bottom, I wanted it to be bumpy like mud. So I got some brown paint and I mixed in some coffee grounds. Your parents probably have some coffee grounds in the kitchen. All right, and it made it bumpy like mud. And I just painted that with my fingers because mud is always kind of messy looking. To do the water in the pond, I mixed some green paint in with my blue. If you just have blue, that's fine. You can use lots of different tools to paint with. I like a sponge when I do water because it almost looks like little bubbles in the water. If you don't have a sponge or you want something different, saran wrap or plastic wrap makes a good print and it also looks like water, or you could use foil. Okay, so you don't have to have a paintbrush, and you could also finger paint. Finger painting would be a good way to do that too. Okay, and if we have a frog in our pond, he's gonna need some other friends to swim with. How about a fish? To make a fish, I used a little paper plate. If you don't have one of these small paper plates, you could just draw a circle on a piece of paper and then you cut out a triangle. I glued the triangle on the back of him to make his tail. And I used little pieces of tissue that I cut up and glued it all over. You could paint it. You could color it with a crayon or a marker. You don't have to use tissue. And then if you had a googly eye, that would be fun to put on there. But if you don't, you can just draw one on there. So then you would have a fish in your pond. You could also make a duck or any other animals you think you would find in a pond. You could just keep adding to this pond all week. You could make a different animal. Another thing that's in the pond besides the animals are the plants. The plants are really important to a pond. And so to make some tall grass, I just practiced cutting. I took some green paper and just cut big strips of grass. And you can put the grass in your pond. And I wanted, and you can just keep cutting and cutting. You have lots of grass there. There's lots of plants around a pond growing in the water and in the mud. I also wanted one of those cattails in mine. So let me move my fish. To make a cattail, I didn't have exactly what I wanted, but I'm using what I have at my house. I cut a big strip of green paper. And some little ones could make the leaves. And then I found these pom-poms. I wish they were brown, but I didn't have brown ones, so I'm using the yellow. And I can glue those on there like that. And that reminds me of one of those cattails you'll see growing in a pond. So this project, this model of a pond, you could just keep adding to it every day. But my favorite plant in a pond are the lily pads with the lily flowers. I found a couple ways that you could make them. If you have the little paper plate, cut the triangle out again. This one I painted. It wasn't my favorite shade of green, but that's the paint I had at my house. Or if you don't have the paper plate, again, you can cut a circle and just cut the triangle out. And that's what I did with this one. And then, of course, you gotta have the flower. The lily flower is the prettiest part. These are really cool plants because they float on top of the pond. I love that. Now to make the flower part, it's pretty easy. You just need a coffee filter or maybe a thin piece of tissue paper, and you can color on it with marker. And I use 2 colors right here. Now, I want the colors to kind of blend together. So the way you do that is you get one of these squirt bottles and you can squirt it with water. Now, squirting a squirt bottle is pretty fun. but if you get this too wet, it ruins it. So just a couple squirts and let it dry. Now I saved this one. I put too much water on it, and look, a bunch of my color came off. But you'll end up with something like this, and then you just grab it in the middle, give it a little twist, and put it on the lily pad, and then you have your lily that can also go in your pond. And there's one other way that I found that was kind of fun to make these flowers instead of just coloring it. This one was new for me. Make a circle in the middle of, this is kind of like science. You make a circle in the middle of your coffee filter, fold it in half, and then fold it in half again, and you're gonna stick it in a cup of water. Now you don't wanna get your marker line wet. You just wanna stick it in a little bit and let it soak up the water. And it's so cool because it will take that circle that you drew and it almost pushes it up the coffee filter, and you get to see the colors that make up that marker. This one I did with a brown marker. You can't even see the circle anymore. It was right here, and the water pushed it to the edge, and now we can see that there's orange and purple in that color. So that would be another way to make your lily. They're beautiful flowers. Another thing that's cool about a lily, besides the fact that it floats on top of the water, at night, those flowers close up. And in the morning, they open. They open nice and big so you can see them. So I have kind of a science experiment over here that you could try with making some paper lilies to see how they open in the morning. All I did was draw some flowers, just a circle in the middle, and then draw your petals. And if you're not good at drawing yet, you could have mom or dad draw that, and then you can color it in. And it needs to be cut out. And then we're gonna fold all of the petals in. And we're gonna put these in the water, and they're gonna open just like lilies do in the morning when the sun comes out. Are you ready to watch this? I made a few so you could see it. These are just really fun to watch open. Watch that. Isn't that cool? So that's kind of an art project and a science project put together. But they're floating on top of the water like a real lily. And this is what lilies do in the morning when the sun comes out. They open up. So I thought that might be a fun activity for you to do. And I hope you enjoy doing these pond activities. See you next time, friends.